See that? Finally a clear sky. Yes. Alright guys, so the general idea here is to mount my DSLR on top of here so we can utilize the auto guiding and the dithering that happens when you have your telescope connected to your equatorial mount. Now, there is problems that come with this, and I'll explain those as I go, but for now I'm just going to reconfigure my telescope here so I can have the DSLR riding piggyback on top of the telescope here. So that means I'm going to have to take my auto guiding scope off. I'm going to have to take the ASI Air Pro off. I'm going to have to just completely configure this around. So that's what I'm going to do now, just to show you guys what I actually had to do to get this thing all set up and ready to image. Now I am going to try to leave this red dot finder attached here. I'm not going to take it off unless I really have to. I have it kind of lined up with my telescope here, so which isn't a big deal. I can realign it, but we're going to just try to avoid that. Alright guys, as you can see, it looks a little different now. I actually I was able to mount my guide scope right here, and this is where the ASI Air Pro used to be, is right here in this slot. So I moved the ASI Air Pro onto a dovetail that I have here, and this is the Apertura Universal Dovetail Plate, I think, and I'll put a link in the description to all this gear that I'm using, and so you guys can find it yourself. So I have the ASI Air Pro mounted here. I have the dovetail actually mounted upside down because there was just no other way I could really get it to fit on there and be able to have room under here and all that to screw the other screws. It was kind of difficult to figure out, but I was able to leave the star finder here, so I didn't touch that. It should still be lined up perfectly with the telescope. All of our cords will come out just like it did before. It'll come out and plug right in, and this doesn't have to be lined up with your telescope. I mean, you want it pointed in the same direction as your scope, but as long as it's pretty close, it's not going to matter a whole lot. It's still going to auto guide and do all that you need it to do. So I don't really worry about this being lined up as much as the red dot finder, because at 650 millimeters without a red dot finder you will get lost. I don't care how good you are at star hopping and all that, you will get lost, and I just always keep that lined up with the scope. But anyway, the thing I wanted to really show you guys is this Alyn Wallace Z plate, and what this thing does, he invented this thing with the Move Shoot Move company to create a ball head that you can use on a star tracker that will keep your camera level for tracked Milky Way panoramas. It's a great design. I think they're about $45. You can either use it on the top just like a ball head, or you can adjust this here. So the reason I put this on the dovetail in the camera here was in case my center of gravity is off a little bit here with the extra weight added on up here, and it'll be really front heavy with a telephoto lens on here, so that's going to push my front center of gravity off quite a bit. So what I really love about the Z plate, you have these levers here, and you can loosen these up, and now I got movement here, but I also have movement here, and you can do them both at the same time, and you can bring back your camera, and you can lock this in at any position here. So say I needed to bring my center of gravity back some, I could bring it back. Let's go ahead and lock this in place. And these things are really durable and strong. It can hold the weight. I think they're designed for 6 pounds or something, so it can hold that weight no problem. And as you can see, the camera is pulled back. My center of gravity is back even with the center of my equatorial mount here, so that will just keep my guiding and everything really tight. And I really like, I can't stress enough how awesome this thing is, guys. I use it all the time and it does great, and he really you can really appreciate that it was created by another photographer slash astro imager. So he really paid attention to the little levers on this thing and keeping them out of the way. They're actually they're designed here, you can lift up on them and pull out. They're actually like a screw in itself. It's a screwdriver. You can kind of just like move it around, and it also rotates. I can loosen it up here on this axis and it rotates this way too, which is really cool. There's a degree mark on the top here. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and move this back. We'll call it to the home position here. Here's the telephoto lens on there. Tonight's target is the Pelican Nebula. If you guys remember, I shot the Cygnus Wall a few weeks ago. Well, the Pelican Nebula is right beside it. I think I'm going to use the Optolong L Extreme filter again, so I can really get that isolated hydrogen alpha and oxygen 3. And on top, I'm going to be using the Canon 80D. It's a full spectrum modified DSLR, and I will pair it with the Optolong L Enhance clip-in filter, and we will kind of have two different images to kind of compare side by side and kind of see what the difference in the L Extreme and the L Enhance are, and hopefully be able to auto guide and dither without the need for a second mount and a second guide scope and all that. We're going to try to do it all in one. One thing I am going to make sure to do, I'm going to have the DSLR pointed exactly the same direction as the telescope. I got the camera on top here. The main problem we're going to run into tonight is the telescope does a thing called dithering after each exposure, which my software on the ASI Air Pro will move the frame between each exposure a couple of pixels in a random direction, and sometimes that takes a few seconds longer. It's a random thing that it does, so you can't really time it to be an exact time every time. So if I run my exposure length the same length as what I'm shooting on the telescope, I'm going to run into that problem where I either have to stand there with the intervalometer all night long and starting and stopping my exposure after each one to try to time it up with the telescope exposures, or kind of shorten my exposures on the Canon and kind of like 2-minute exposures on the Canon and then do 5-minute exposures on the telescope, and that way I can kind of get 2 exposures on the Canon, and then during the next exposure it will mess it up by dithering on the telescope, and then I'll only lose 1 frame out of every 2 or 3 frames that I do, so I'll end up throwing away about 1/3 of all the exposures for the night. I'll get 5-minute exposures on the telescope, and hopefully that'll work out good. So that's probably the plan, 2-minute exposures. Yeah, hopefully this works out, guys, and I can show you guys a pretty cool comparison between a DSLR and a cool astronomy camera, kind of on the same target. Alright guys, I think it's dark enough. I'm going to go ahead and get polar aligned here. If you do this, make sure that wherever your battery is at here, that you got room. I made sure, I kept that in mind while I was attaching this to make sure that if I needed to change my battery throughout the night, I can. It's a big deal right there. You don't want to be stuck with not a way to get a new battery in there. So. Okay, what I'm going to do now, I forgot to do this step, I actually have to focus the lens up here. So I'm going to go ahead and just slew to a bright star here. Okay, we're slewing to Antares here. I'm just going to use the in-camera timer here on 30 seconds. I'm going to go over and I'm going to set this to a 2-second delay right now until I get my intervalometer. I forgot it inside at ISO 3200. Let's go to 30 seconds here. And I'm going to start the one on the Canon first. Now we're going to start this. Okay, there it goes. Okay, we're not exactly centered, but I think it'll be alright. I'm in focus here. You can see that they line up pretty good here. This one on the Canon is a little to the left, but that's okay. I don't want to mess with anything. Just leave it how it is. Alright guys, we are on, I think we are on the Pelican Nebula. So now, we're going to go ahead and do a test exposure here. I'm going to dim this light down. That is a nice signal right there, guys. Pretty excited about this. Hopefully these clouds will hold out. If not, at least we got a good test in. Seems like everything's going good. I'm gonna let this run for the next 5 hours. I'm just gonna, I don't have to worry about a meridian flip or anything like that. So, look at that. I'm excited about that right there. That's gonna look really good, guys. Yeah. Alright guys, we got our target finally going. I got 2.5 minute exposures going on the Canon. I did ISO 1600 at f4, and it's a nice wide field shot of the North American Pelican Nebula, kind of to show you a wider field shot versus the closer up version on the telescope. So it looks really nice. The data is really good, and I'm pretty beat. The meridian flip doesn't happen until after it starts getting daylight, so I'm just going to go ahead and set my alarm, go to sleep, and get up at like 5 in the morning, and maybe take some flat frames and some bias frames and stuff, and yeah, so we'll come back in the morning and see how everything looks.